Okay.
Hi, John Dowe. How are you?
Hey, hey, hey.
Very busy man. Hard to get a time with you too.
Oh man, I'm living life pretty quickly these days. Yes.
Yeah. So tell me, what I'd like to do as much as possible is cover the timeline and give just an overall view of what happened, when it happened, kind of, if we can, who was behind it, that kind of stuff. So I mean, just as for example, we know that this drug is some 70 years old. It was developed post World War II, right? And it was dusted off the shelf, brought into service roughly in mid 80s, I guess. And then we picked it up, correct?
You betcha. The drug was first synthesized from the 8-aminoquinoline group. Quite a few decades ago now. As a sort of, a dire need to get better antimalarials out to the troops because chloroquine resistance began to appear in the Vietnam era. And so, as a result, Mefloquine was then brought to the community, the military communities worldwide, and we've been fighting via pharmacovigilance efforts ever since to get the drug's true side effect profile recognized. Because unfortunately, as Canada comes into the experience with Mefloquine, we didn't do the phase 3 trials correctly. A drug trial in the Somalia era was botched, it was not adhered to, where the Department of National Defense had initially agreed to being co-investigators of the drug in conjunction with Health Canada. As part of that earlier mentioned drug trial, that's where things began to go awry. And we do not have any capture of the data that was required by D&D and Health Canada to capture as part of that phase 3. And over the years, as we've seen Mefloquine fall out of favor in the international traveling community, it also fell out of favor with the military applications worldwide. Canada, as yet, is not on board because of pending litigation, and they would cede culpability for the manner in which they dispensed the drug all these many years.
Well spoken. So how did we end up with this drug? Do we know? Who would have had to do the procurement order? It would have gone through Health Canada? Was it the Department of National Defense that makes the request?
So yes, let's get into the mechanics of this.
Yeah.
So as I earlier mentioned, that Department of National Defense would be co-investigators as part of a safety monitoring study with Health Canada, their phase 3 trial, to determine the efficacy and the effects on the troops. So unfortunately, Department of National Defense, who got the drug for free from the Americans, our medical Surgeon General and the tropical medicine group. We have a actual tropical medicine advisory group within Department of National Defense and infectious diseases, and they work in conjunction with CATMAT. So that's an acronym, meaning the Canadian Advisory on Tropical Medicine and Travel, or something like that. Now, this organization came into being as the Department of National Defense and the Canadian Armed Forces, as that entity in Health Canada acquired the drug for free. So when they acquired that drug in the early 90s, at the same time, this advisory committee I'm telling you about, that is under the auspices of Health Canada, but are their own separate entity, CATMAT, that was the expert consult to our Canadian Armed Forces Surgeon General. And the Canadian Armed Forces Surgeon General accepted that Mefloquine would be, that the trial would occur with the Canadian Armed Forces members, and that they would get the drug for free. Again, later, they reneged on the deal, and they did not follow through with the safety monitoring study, their part. And when Health Canada went knocking on the door, looking for all the paperwork, Department of National Defense said, no, it meant we do not consider ourselves, or have we ever considered ourselves, as part of the co-investigative group for this study. So one message then became another message, and this other message came about because of the Somalia debacle, the Somalia affair, the tragic beating death of Shadena Rome. Now, let's go back to CatMat. CatMat worked, that organization of tropical medicine doctors, and there's Dr. J. Keystone, who is a cornerstone, a capstone on the Canadian experience, the pharma experience with Mefloquine. So Dr. J. Keystone, he's out of Toronto. Dr. Kevin Kane, I believe, is another civilian. And there's a few more that worked in coordination and conjunction with the Department of National Defense Infectious Diseases and Tropical Medicine Group. So that's the mechanism of how the drug came into play with our Canadian soldiers, that route. Now, Surgeon General at the time in Somalia, I believe, was Wendy Clay, or soon after was Wendy Clay. You've heard that name before.
Yes. In fact, I had an opportunity to sit down and make a presentation along with the psychiatrist, Dr. Robert Oxlade, on what we consider to be a better treatment for post-traumatic stress than just throwing the drugs at it, because they were using the SSRI antidepressants, and he was basically saying, no, you shouldn't be using these. But interestingly enough, he was also an expert on Mefloquine. And that was the first time that that I learned that post-traumatic stress and Mefloquine had overlap. And the way he explained it is almost impossible to separate where one begins and the other ends.
Yes.
That was back in '97, and we did a presentation in '98, and I believe she was still the Surgeon General at the time. But I don't think she was the Surgeon General when we first deployed.
Gotcha. Yeah. I've heard the name, so that's where she fits in. Great.
Yeah.
I think she got a job with Health Canada after, did she not?
Would not be surprising. This is something that we see a lot in industry, where you see someone who is within an organization or an industry that rotates into a government position of oversight of the very industry that they used to work for. So
right.
Not uncommon. Most generals are actually low-level bureaucrats, and that's,
we know that.
Yeah. So this is what we're fighting: is these bureaucrats and decision makers, who, and some of which wear rank, really have their own interests that they're gunning for, as opposed to the interests of those being deployed.
Absolutely, Stefan. And now the battle for us has been over the years, while PTSD became a diagnosis of convenience, where a lot of people their symptoms were misattributed and to maybe a critical incident or whatnot, and they received that PTSD. For some who do have PTSD, they could have quinism. We're talking about Mefloquine poisoning. They could have both, or they could just simply have the quinism. So yes, but the battle we've been having, as you know, is that while you're seeing this transfer back and forth of these bureaucrats and senior military leadership back and forth with Health Canada and whatnot, also that CatMat body I've been talking to you about that works with Health Canada, that crew would send their doctors out over the years to discount, all right, or gaslight, if you will, all those adverse event reports and experiences and bad user experiences over the years, where someone invariably would say, hey, I think it's the drug, I think it's the Mefloquine. And they would trot out Dr. J. Keystone or someone else to say, no, and they would pull the same, drunk and druggy line, or it's childhood abuse, or it's this or that, anything but Mefloquine. They used every trick in the book along the way to continue to tamp down this ever-increasing anecdotal evidence in Canada and around the world. We got to a point of what you could call an event horizon, especially now with the legal work, where, you know what, no more lies. They don't work anymore. They've lost it.
Kind of
with
interesting.
the advent of the internet, with the advent of us advocating with others, with the brilliant work of Dr. Remington Nevin, it's over. We're at #endgame.
Yeah, so, just right on that subject, the last report that came out of the Surgeon General's office was done by Brigadier General Colin McKay. I actually worked with him when he was a captain. I sat down with him about a year prior to that report coming out. Once again, in an advocacy capacity, working on Veterans House. He was instrumental actually in helping us to rebrand or come out with better terms of reference that would be accepted in the medical community, as far as how we spoke and what we were saying and what we wanted to accomplish.
Right.
I was really disappointed in in that report. I was looking into it very, very recently, and it was interesting because I've been going through some of the old WHO reports, World Health Organization from 85 through to 93, I think, or something like that. Mm-hmm. And some of the horrors that they list and the numbers that they present, and then when you look at the Surgeon General's report, none of that's there.
Right. So when they say, just quickly, when they say there's limited evidence, what they're talking about is there's limited evidence accepted in Canada.
That's right.
Accept or look outside the box. They won't look at the international community. They won't even look towards the European drug regulators that have already declared this drug is not only neurotoxic, but that can present permanent symptoms as a result. So, this is a rearguard action. This is a defensive action on the part of our government, as they understand the great number, and it is definitely expressed in the amount of litigants we have. We're over 1,100 people that are going to demand justice, acknowledgement, and treatment from this government, or from the sitting government. Whoever it will be that's going to have to answer, it's going to be sizable.